of DMS IIT Delhi. Nirmaan Series is focused on bringing out the stories of entrepreneurs who are changing our world better every day. Sashakt is working towards providing resources, ideas into reality, and foster the ethos of entrepreneurship into DMS ecosystem. Through the committed efforts of the committee and the department alike, the DMS family aims to make DMS IIT Delhi the startup hub of North India in the upcoming years.
Sashakt has planted a fruit-bearing plant at Zaria, West Bengal under COVID-19 Heroes campaign of Sankalp Foundation with the help of landowner Mr. Niranjan Sinha Babu for every leader visiting us. We would like to welcome leader Mr. Arun Sharma, who is like those fruit-bearing plants in the society who are self-made evergreen and making this place a better one by their mere presence only.
Great things in business are never done by one person. They are done by a team of people. It always takes the concerted efforts of a group of determined and motivated individuals to launch and run a startup. For this reason, finding and building the right team is paramount for every aspiring entrepreneur. We are privileged to have Mr. Arun Sharma sir to share his invaluable thoughts on this topic, how to build your team for starting up.
Arun Sharma sir is an IIM Bangalore graduate who gave up a lucrative corporate career to take the road less traveled. An author, entrepreneur, trainer, and a teacher all rolled out into one does not even begin to describe his genius. Variously described as a youth icon and inspiration to millions, he has a unique record of having cracked the CAT, one of the toughest exams across the world, an incredible 20 out of 20, with a percentile ranging in a gravity-defying 99.9 plus range. Ask him why he does it, and he replies with a smile to break the myth that it is a tough exam. As an entrepreneur, he is co-founder of Mindworkzz and Arun Sharma Academy, highly reputed EdTech organization that train over 10,000 students every year.
A much loved teacher and mentor to lakhs of students, Arun Sharma sir has had a hand in creating tens of thousands of success stories amongst his students, whether you talk about helping them become an IS officer or IIM graduates. Consistently amongst the top 5 authors on online portals like Flipkart, Amazon, etc. For close to 2 decades now, his book on CAT, UPSC preparation have created history. Arun Sharma sir has authored close to 10 titles in the test preparation segment and has achieved phenomenal success as an author with a count of 3.5 million plus books sold. Besides, he is also associated with Khabri for creating Hindi language podcasts for the semi-urban and rural youth of India, and also with An Academy as an educator. Sir, I would now kindly request you to take over the stage. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. It's such a pleasure to be live with you guys today. And just sorry, I'm technologically challenged, although I run this at text. I just have to share my screen here. Have you given me the screen sharing option? It's not enabled for me.
So just a second, let me check.
Yeah, I think now I can share the screen. So basically, entrepreneurship is something that is very close to my heart, in the sense that, as you heard in my introduction, right from the start, when I passed out of IIM Bangalore, my whole challenge at that time. I mean, and I was, almost the previous generation. 1995 is when I passed out. For most of you, CAT cat was CAT cat, the animal. A few years later, not you were not even born at that time, most of you, I guess. So. Just trying to put across my screen here. It is just buffering there. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, so the whole point. I mean, it was a very different India at that time, 1995, when I took that plunge. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and essentially what got me going, or Just why is my screen not sharing? Share options already, right? Maybe I can send this this PPT across to you guys.
Sure, sir. You can send it across and we'll present it for you.
Because the machine says it's not going across. Okay. Send it to Sujata. Sujata, you got it?
Yes, sir. Please send it to me. I'll share it for you.
Send it on WhatsApp, yeah. Start sharing it. So the whole point, I mean, as I said, it was a very different India at that time, and entrepreneurship was not the attractive romantic option at this point at that time as it was today, because you had a very different environment, so to say. I mean, you as a starting entrepreneur, you could not think about the world as a market, which you can do today. You could not think beyond one city as a market for whatever product or service you wanted to build. And as often happens the case, my first entrepreneurial experience was a huge failure, and I got into cat trading just because of the fact that being a first generation entrepreneur and having the challenges of being a first generation entrepreneur, I really did not have much options to go back after that failure into the corporate sector. So it kind of I had the option choice of either sinking or swimming, and the only way to sink was to get into a venture where it was skill oriented rather than investment oriented. Because, as I said, being a first generation entrepreneur, you really don't have too much investment backup, so to say, in your arsenal. So once you fail at something, you have to get back to the basics, and you really reach that swim or sink or swim situation. So I'm just waiting for Sujata to place the PPT there, so we can start. Yeah, so the entrepreneur's journey, that's what my whole this thing is, and I'll of course come to the main issue that a lot of you are here to hear me about, specifically about the founding or the building of teams, and how should you build your teams, etc. How should you go about building a team, and how should you, as I said, how to get others to join you on the ride as you build an entrepreneurial venture, right? So but before you start thinking about entrepreneurship, you need to understand. Can we move to the next slide? You need to understand why you want to be an entrepreneur. What is it that attracts you towards an entrepreneurship? And do you have that craziness quotient? Because somewhere it is a very illogical decision to jump into entrepreneurship. Why is it illogical? Simply because of the fact that 80, 85, maybe 90%, various estimates, various surveys give you different percentages of the failure rate of an entrepreneurial venture. And essentially, you have to be crazy to do something where 9 out of 10 times you're going to fail. I mean, as a career choice, specifically in today's world. And the argument that goes, next slide, please. The argument that goes is, I mean, what attracts you to entrepreneurship? I know all this: exciting, romantic, utopian, an amazing journey, exciting. I mean, adventure in your life. It adds all that to you, and so many more things. But there's a flip side. The flip side on the other slide, on the next slide, is that it's bloody hard work. It's gut wrenching. It's scary. There are days on which you have nobody to give you a base from where you enter what can be called free falls, as what happened to my own life 2 years after I set into my entrepreneurial venture. You have those free fall days, the free fall time zones where you are the only person who's responsible for it. So it puts you on the line all the time, and so many more things. And if you still want to go into entrepreneurship, you still want to become an entrepreneur, welcome to the gang. And one last thing before that, is it really worth it? The argument people talk about for entrepreneurship is that it's a wealth creating journey. right? You will create more wealth as an entrepreneur than you can in your this thing in your journey. You will create more wealth as an entrepreneur than if you are in a conventional job. But that whole question has started to change now. That whole perspective has started to change now, because if you look at the wealth that you can create now out of a conventional corporate job, it's completely changed. You get into one of these good corporate companies that take the employees around, and hopefully if you can build a good organization, and you can build the 1 out of 10 successful entrepreneurial ventures. If you can build that, one of the things as a leader that you will have to think about is how do you create wealth for your employees. And obviously there are hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs who have reached that point where they are now thinking about wealth creation for employees rather than wealth creation for themselves. So out there in the world, there are still a lot of opportunities. Even now, there are a lot of opportunities. In the future, there are going to be a lot of opportunities where you don't need to put yourself on the line for creating wealth in your life. You can have a conventional corporate job and get into companies and ventures and industries that give you ESOPs, etc., and then earn your moolah through that. So why do you want to still become an entrepreneur? Want to express yourself in the world, right? You just keep going back a couple of slides back again. We still back on the previous slide. So you still want to become an entrepreneur? You still want to do something? So one thing, a few things that I can talk about that would still attract me. From my batch at IIM Bangalore, I think there are 3 or 4 of us who actually went ahead and went whole hog into entrepreneurship, while our batchmates were going up the corporate ladder. And you'll realize one thing, and as I realized myself, in the entrepreneurship game, your income or your actual earnings, the cycle is slightly different. You will not earn much in the first 5 to 10 years of your entrepreneurial venture, of your entrepreneurial journey. But once, if and when your income cycle starts, then it's going to actually overcome all the income cycles that your friends would have created. And that's one of the challenges in today's world. I was invited at IIM Bangalore a couple of years back to speak to the incoming batch, and that's what I was telling them when they heard about me and that I'm there in the speakers. A lot of people were asking me about entrepreneurship, and a lot of questions were directed about entrepreneurship. I told them one thing, that if you really want to become an entrepreneur, then for the first 5 to 10 years, don't look at the income ratio between you and your friend, your best friend who is going the conventional way and having a salary check at the end of the month. Stop looking at that, because if you start looking at that, you will not be able to survive beyond 6 months to a year as an entrepreneur. You have to recognize the fact, if you want to become an entrepreneur, you have to recognize the fact that the income cycle of an entrepreneur is different from the income cycle of a conventional job seeker or a conventional person who's seeking a salary check at the end of the month. And that income cycle, and it's actually a thumb rule. Every career in life, every career out there in the world has different time zones when you actually earn an income out of it. So if you look at, let's say, a doctor, when does a doctor earn? When does a doctor actually earn? Right? A doctor who's setting up his own practice or setting up his own hospital, his earning cycle starts late in his 40s. Till that time, he's more or less hand to mouth. But once he starts his earning cycle, he overcomes everything that he's not. If he's successful, he'll overcome everything that he's missed out on in the first 15, 20 years. Usi tarah se, when does the earning cycle of a lawyer start? Again in the 40s. You will not have very high earning lawyers at 25, 30. Right? And of course, unless you're in a corporate sector job, then you are not really in a profession. So you need to understand that every career has different income cycles, and entrepreneurship is no different. So if you are in a conventional job, 2 options that you have as you pass out of an institution like IIT or an IIM is you go into the conventional corporate career. And your income cycle is from the time you are passing out, 23, 24, 25, whatever time you finish your education, to 55, 60. That's your principal income cycle. And if you want to earn beyond that, you'll have to create something and become entrepreneurial towards the end of that life or of that career innings. An entrepreneur's income cycle starts, if he's at it, will start typically, income will start flowing. It's not that it will not flow, but income will start flowing in bits and pieces because there's no underlying banking system that's going to give you that money all the time to take home for your own bread and butter. So income cycle will start maybe between 1,500 to 3,000 days of your starting an entrepreneurship, and if you're doing something consistently during that time. But the biggest flip side or the positive side to it is that the income cycle of an entrepreneur does not end even with the end of his life. If an entrepreneur, a really successful entrepreneur, will be able to create an organization and will be able to create a vehicle which will keep impacting the world beyond what he has lived, and hence the world will keep giving him income. Ultimately, the bottom line of any entrepreneurial or any venture or any business venture is some service or some product that you can create for the world, and the world gives you money for it. The bottom line is that. So whether you look at Coca-Cola selling a cold drink, or you look at a Fortis hospital, or you look at an edtech venture. Essentially, why any business earns is because you're offering a product or service for which people are willing to earn for you. And a true entrepreneurial venture or a true business venture is one that has the potential or builds to the point where it goes beyond the life cycle of the life of an entrepreneur. Hence, the biggest payoffs as an entrepreneur will not just be to yourself once you cross that 10-year period, but the payoffs go beyond your life and go into your next generations, because that's something which is different. So imagine two friends, X and Y, who pass out of IIT Delhi today. X continues doing, gets into a professional career. Y gets into an entrepreneurial career. The life cycle of X, or the earning cycle of X, as I said, will be at 35 years. And at the end of it, he'll have a strong bank balance. He'll have made a lot of money, which he'll pass on to the next generation. But as an entrepreneur, why? If he's been successful, 1 out of 10 whys, if he's been successful, he will not just pass on the bank balance and the money to his next generation. He'll also pass on the vehicle that has given him that income to the next generation, and which is something which is invaluable, because you give your next generation something which is much more valuable than just the bank balance through which you can then start building a career. So that's my perspective on this. So if you have understood this critical factor about entrepreneurship, I will always swear, I've had a lot of ups and downs in my life. I would have had a much cushier and much easier life if I had just been in the corporate sector and been there and continued with that. But then, as my good friend Somil keeps talking about, Somil is the co-founder of a company called Edu Sports. He's one of the 4 people. He's also an IIT Bombay and IIM Bangalore alumnus. He says, one life, would you rather live it any other way? So the adventure, that's what I said. You have to have that craziness quotient. कि कुछ करना है लाइफ में, कुछ impact create करना है, कुछ vehicle बना के जाना है, which creates that impact mechanism, where you can keep impacting it. Because one very very major thing which I forgot to tell you, why you should become an entrepreneur. Because if you become a successful entrepreneur, you'll realize by the time you are past those 3,000 days, by the 4,000, 5,000th day of your entrepreneurial life, you'll realize that 95%, 98% of your income does not depend on what you do. It depends on what others do for you. Whereas in a conventional career, you will keep earning till the day you're working for whatever is giving you that career or that innings that you're playing. So these are factors that pull you towards this side. So having if you think that these are attractive enough for you, if you think that you are really up for the risk to take it that side, then you come to the guy and you say, okay, I want to take this because the ultimate answer, the craziness question wala answer वही है. One life. What would I rather be? Would I want to play it safe? वो बॉल वर्ल्ड कप T20 वर्ल्ड कप हो रहा है, बॉल को 1 रन के लिए मारना है कि छक्का मारना है? छक्का मारने में आउट भी हो सकते हो, लेकिन लग गया तो you become a hero. That's what it is. So what do you want to play? You want to play the singles or you want to play the sixes? Is the question. So the whole point then is, as I said, once you've got all past all that, you need to recognize now in today's world. The next slide, please, Sujata. You need to recognize in today's world that the business environment is completely changed. So as I said, 1995 when I was starting out, I had a product or a service which was my first venture, which failed eventually. And I had a product and service, and that product and service, I decided to set up an office where I would sell it in a limited geographical area, because that was the constraint at that time. The business was constrained by the geographical area. But the business environment has completely changed through the WWW. The fact is, basically, is the World Wide Web, which has created that, and that has created access to consumers and markets. It's given access to capital. When I wanted to start as a 23-year-old, fresh out of IIM Bangalore, when I wanted to start this venture, and it was a franchise of a computer education center called Tata Unisys, and the investment at that time for me was huge because it was 30 lakh investment. As an IIM graduate, your salary was 2 lakhs at that time, 1990s, and per annum I'm talking about, and access to capital was only going to a loan, going for a loan from a nationalized bank. And you went to a nationalized bank for a loan, they would ask you कि पहले collateral दे दो, तुमको मेरे से 20 लाख रुपए चाहिए, मेरे को 50 लाख का collateral दो, तो तुम्हारे फैमिली में है वो collateral, फैमिली को कन्विंस कर सकते हो, तब जाके वो पैसा मिलेगा, otherwise you can't play the game, right? Unfortunately, I played the game, I put the collateral, and my venture flopped within 6 months to a year. But that's a different story. But you have got access to capital. You've got much less risk-free capital now available with venture capital and angel funding, etc. I've got an immediate call after this session with a venture capital fund, with an angel investment fund, which I'm part. I'm part of this thing. So we keep listening to stories from various entrepreneurs who pitch their ideas, and then we decide whether we want to put in money on that or not. So anyway, so access of capital is much better, and of course access to mentoring, information, everything has improved now. So when you are trying to build a venture today, you should try to make sure that you leverage these things so that you can cut out a lot of the risks and the problems that happen to first generation entrepreneurs, first time entrepreneurs. Right. So the next thing, but having said that, Sujata got this timing exactly right. The more things change, the more they remain the same. I mean, in the sense that the backbone of a business venture, if you take the X-ray, I mean, if you look at let's say we talk about the human mind. 100 years ago, what the human mind was thinking or had created was very different from what you have created in today's day and age. But if you take the X-ray, has it changed? If you take the X-ray of my mind versus you take the X-ray of my brain versus my grandfather's brain, you will see that more or less it looks the same. So similarly, if you are able to actually X-ray any business venture, you'll realize that the backbone of a business venture has not changed. And what is the key component of that backbone? And hence, I mean, what is backbone is because when you're planning your venture, you need to make sure that the backbone is strong and the backbone is correct. Because if the backbone is correct, everything else can fall into place. लेकिन अगर backbone ill-formed है, backbone गलत है, backbone है ही नहीं, तो तुम्हारा venture last नहीं करने वाला है और तुम कुछ नहीं बना पाओगे. So what are the components of this backbone? So the components of, I mean, you look at a business 300 years ago, you look at a business today, the backbone is always this. This is the core of every venture. Is the idea, again, set against the problem you're solving. Right? It's an idea set against the problem you're solving. So right from the time when the British were sending their manufactured clothes in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, they're sending their manufactured clothes to Indian markets. To the time where today you have all kinds of ventures, a venture like Urban Clap saying that hum aapka ghar aake saaf kar denge. At every point of time, I mean, whether you look at the backbone of the business, there's a problem that a consumer is facing, and there's an idea that you have, how can I solve that problem? And business is always built. Second point in this is that business is always built on arbitrage. I'll solve this problem, and to solve this problem for you, the cost to me will be X rupees, but I'll sell it to you at 1.5x. I'll sell this service or this product to you at 1.5x. The consumer, on the other hand, realizes that if I try to do it on my own, I will take more than 1.5x myself, or I'll take more or less 1.5x. So why should I take the headache? Let me give 1.5x to this company or to this venture, and they'll do the job for me. And that's the basic at the core of every business venture. You have to have a problem that you're solving. You have to have an idea of how you're going to solve that problem. And you have to be able to create an arbitrage while solving that problem. Because if you're not creating arbitrage while solving the problem, if to get a revenue of 1.5x, you're spending 2x. There are people doing that nowadays, of course. As you know, all these funded companies, etc. But that's a different story. There you're playing. I'll come to that. Then you're playing the valuation game, and that's one of the questions you'll have to ask yourself. Do you want to bootstrap plus debt funded, or do you want to be VC funded kind of venture? What do you want to do? Again, VC funding, etc., sounds very romantic and attractive, but behind everything that is romantic and attractive, there's always a dark side. So you need to understand that. And of course, every journey is its own. There are no right and wrong answers in these, right? So that's the second point. The third point, as you can see on the slide, is build a great product or service that fulfills an activated need. Right? Needs are of two kinds. Needs are activated or dormant. Right? So for example, I don't know whether you know this case study. We were taught this at IIM Bangalore. When the person who made the Xerox machine, the photocopy machine, invented it for the first time, he had to run from pillar to post to find a company who would take the product, who would take the patent, and who would buy the patent and build the product for him. And no company was taking it for almost a decade. If my memory serves me right, almost a decade, he was not able to convince anybody that there's a need for a photocopier. No company was ready to do it. There was a small company at the time, all this was happening only in the US. There's a small company in the US by the name of Xerox, which saw potential in the idea. And they decided that we'll build this product. And you know the rest is history. I mean, photocopying became almost synonymous with Xerox. It became part of your language. You did not say that मैं Canon करने जा रहा हूँ. You said मैं Xerox करने जा रहा हूँ. Xerox करके लेके आ रहा हूँ. That was the language. That is how deep the product got embedded with the brand, right? So you have to build a product service, and you need to come into the market for an activated need, or you have to be able to. If there's a dominant need you have found, a dominant problem that you have found, then you have to be able to convince the customer that he needs a solution for this. Otherwise, there have been so many cases of products being too early to market. People have come in with a product into the market, and the market does not realize the need for it, and the whole advertising campaign and the sales campaign for that product has failed completely. So this is something that you have to understand. How active is your need? Because again, if you want to, typically, if you are going after an activated need, you will not be the fourth and fifth points here. You will not be the only one doing it. So there are pros and cons for both of them. If you're going for a need that is activated, Just say suppose let's think in small terms. Suppose you want to open a biryani delivery counter or biryani delivery brand in Delhi. So there are already 20 people doing it. You'll be the 21st. You'll not be the only one. There's an activated need for having biryanis every day in lunch and dinner. There's a certain demand for biryani in a city like Delhi or any other city in India. So if you try to do it, you are one of the 20 providers who already doing it. So you'll not be the only one who's doing it because the need is activated and other people have seen the need. But if you try to do something which is completely new, if you try to do something which is completely new, and which where the need has not been identified by people, maybe the need is not even felt by the customers, then you might be the only one doing it. But the flip side of it is, will you be able to convert it into sales where the customer says, yes, I want to pay for this? That's a big question mark. So that these are things that you need to consider. And if you're not the only one doing a product, there are hundreds or maybe few, sometimes 2, 3, 5 people doing that product, sometimes hundreds of people doing that product. Then the next thing happens, if you're one of them, last slide please, Sujata. The last point of that, do it better than others. Right? You will sell because you're doing it better than the others. So that you move out of what I call the FF&F model of business. The FF&F model of business, I don't know whether you've heard this short form. Friends, family, friends, and fools. Right? Whom are you selling to? You're selling to friends, family, and fools. Right? So there is an emotional connect between your business and them. So they will fools will not evaluate कि ये product से वो product better है तो तुम्हारा खरीद लेंगे वो by default or by error. Or there is a emotional connect between friends and family and you. So तुमने कुछ start किया तो तुमको encourage करने के लिए तुम्हारा बिरयानी खा लेंगे. I mean they'll take it from you rather than they'll take the product from you rather than from someone else who might be clearly a better product. So if you really want to build a business, you have to move out of the FFF model. You cannot be stuck to the FFF model because still you are in that zone. Friends, family se exhaust ho jayenge. Only fools are buying your product. Till that time, you can't really build a business of value because the fools will run out. The number of fools in the world will run out with more information. You can keep making people fools by keeping them in the dark about information. But as the WWW is spreading information and light across the world, at the same time, it's also spreading darkness. But that's a different issue. But since it's spreading all that, you will realize that there's a point of time when you run out of fools who will keep buying your product. So you really cannot build a perpetual revenue stream and hence a perpetual business out of the FFF model. You have to go to the point where a product or a service sells to the rational unknown. There's somebody rational sitting out there. He does not know you. You do not know him. He hears about you. He looks at the product and he decides that I want this. That's when you have a business. That's when you have a business venture. That's the key element. Because I mean, let me say, let's say I reached that point where I've moved out of the FFF model of selling this pen drive to people. Right? I've moved out of that FFF model of selling this pen drive to people. So once I've moved out of the FFF model and I can convince one person, one rational, unknown person, that you should buy the pen drive from me. After that, the whole challenge becomes branding and marketing. Till that, you don't have a business. But if I can convince one people to buy my product for an arbitrage, then I can convince 1,000 people. If I can convince 1,000 people, why can't I add 3 more zeros to it? We are no longer in a world where we are geographically constrained. We are no longer in a world where we are geographically limited. So we are in a world where the markets are worldwide. So you can sell a pen drive in Russia and you can sell a pen drive in China once you have crossed that FFF model of business. So that's the whole point. So you have to understand, or you have to remember this as a leader or as an emerging leader for the future. Are you able to convince that rational unknown person, one rational unknown? That's the test of the product. एक आदमी जो rationally सोच रहा है और तुमको नहीं जानता है, he should be ready to buy a product on his own. And once that happens, once that test is done, then you hand it over to your sales and marketing teams etc. And they take care of the remaining part, because then it's just about finding customers and continuing to multiply the arbitrage that you have. So we can go to the next slide, Sujata. So then this is the more, I think this is the most critical part of the business. तो उसके बाद business becomes easy. एक बार तुमको unknown rational individual मिल गया ना, once you can find one unknown rational individual or maybe 100 unknown rational individuals who have bought the product again and again because they realize that there's some value in this. तो उसके बाद तो it's just about putting the conventional management principles into place. Conventional management principles, as I said, is branding, making sure that your financial structures are in place, so that your sales and your venture gets supported. If there's a need at a certain this thing, you should have the money to create enough so that you can service that need, etc. So it all goes into conventional management principles. But as an entrepreneur, this is the biggest problem. Find the problem, find the idea, and this is your first and the most important step of your entrepreneurial venture. What is the problem you're solving, and what is the idea, and what is the checklist at this point? When you start thinking, because when you start thinking, there are hundreds of things that will come to your mind. एक electric car बना लेते हैं. You guys are IT, at least the tech people are brilliant at technology. So you have hundreds and hundreds, thousands of ideas, and they're all floating around. Which one do you want to pick up? Which one do you want to pick up? And why? So you have had, if you actually look at it, 90% businesses who succeed, forget the business who fail, वो तो उसका बात अब नहीं कर रहे हैं. I'm talking about the 1 out of 10 who succeed, or maybe the less than 1 out of 10 who succeed. You will see, if you look at the history of those businesses, from the largest companies, biggest companies in the world, to small ventures which are now starting off, you will see that, I'll give it, what the point I'm making here, I'll give it to you through an example. If you read Akio Morita's autobiography, he was the founder of Sony Corporation. He talks about his first few years as an entrepreneur in that and the struggle he had as an entrepreneur in bombed out Japan after the World War II, after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, and after Tokyo was demolished. He started from a semi bombed out building where Sony had its first office. You know what Sony's first product was? Sony's first product, in his autobiography, Mr. Morita talks about it. The first product was heating pillows with heating element inside it. Sony, can you even imagine this? Sony, the largest sound corporation in the world, went on to become one of the dominant ones. Of course, it's lost business now for the last few years, but still one of the biggest corporations in the world, billions of dollars of valuation, etc. Their first product was heating pillows. Why? Because they were trying to research on the tape recorder. They were trying to research on the tape recorder. And he talks about the fact that when we finally built our first tape recorder, it was the size of a room. So they had to take a truck to exhibit it at universities. And when they went there, this is in the context of the product being too early to the market and nobody realizing dominant need. So he talks about it in his autobiography that when we used to take this thing, we used to have to take appointments from university chairpersons and vice chancellors. कि मेरा ये नया product है, इसको आप देखिए. So when they used to go and give the demonstration, एक बड़ा सा room type का setup, imagine करो एक truck के जितना बड़ा tape recorder है. And the only service it does is you speak something and it records it. It records the sound and plays it back. So he talks about the fact that when we used to go and present this to people used to be amused and they used to be very excited. Wow, this is good. But then he says that the typical response would be कि हमको क्या जरूरत है इसकी? बहुत अच्छा चीज है, बहुत exciting चीज है, लेकिन हमको जरूरत नहीं है इसकी. हम क्या करेंगे इसको लेके? So the business was not happening for him. So to survive during that time, Sony used to sell something like heating pillows with their heating coil in it, because they said we needed revenues. और वो market में चल रहा था. It is like you are trying to build the greatest let's say a tech company in the world in the future in 20 years time, और तुम आज वो कनॉट प्लेस के पास रेड लाइट पे जाके तुम वो मॉस्किटो सॉर्टर बेच रहे हो, क्योंकि वो बिकता है वहां पे, तो थोड़ा रेवेन्यू से आ जाएगा, तो तुम बना सकते हो उसको. सो इट्स लाइक दैट, similar situation. So point I'm trying to make is, so through this example, is that it's not necessarily that you will have that one eureka moment in your life. आज मैं उठ गया और मेरे को आइडिया आ गया और मेरे को प्रॉब्लम समझ में आ गया. ऐसा नहीं होगा. You will have to iterate your idea. You'll have to keep coming back to the idea again and again. I've had founders in my group of friends and fellow leaders. We have people who found their idea after 8 years, 10 years, 12 years of actually doing something, and then finally finding that one thing that they wanted to do. So the ideas evolve, ideas mutate, ideas change. So for example, at Mindworkzz, we had to completely change who we are trying to be after COVID happened. So environmental factors change ideas, opportunities change ideas, and now we realize that as an edtech company, we realize that it's much better to be this way, and it's turned out for us to be a boon to that we have moved completely into the education technology field. So the checklist at this stage is few things that you should look at. You can see from this slide. Is your problem an active one, or is it something that is passive? This is important, specifically if you want quick revenues. Passive problems will not give you quick revenues in general. If it's a passive problem, how do you plan to activate the need in your target market? Do you have the money to do it, to activate the need? So this is where specifically passive problems should typically not be attacked with your own money, because it's going to be difficult to do it. It should be, I think if it's a passive problem you're solving, my clear advice should be that you should go ahead and do it on the basis of you should push it through funding and so that the risk gets minimized on your own pocket. Next point. So this is the problem stage. The problem you're looking at, is it active or passive? Then the next thing is your idea unique, or is it a Me Too idea? Right? Me Too ideas also work. I mean, Me Too ideas specifically, geographical location transfer का तो Me Too ideas बहुत ही work करता है. बहुत सारे $1 billion valuation companies have done nothing but to take an idea that has worked in the US, worked in China, and brought it into India. ये भी करते हैं लोग. So Me Too idea is not as bad as it sounds. हाँ, Me Too idea should not be कि मेरा neighbor कर रहा है तो मैं भी कर लेता हूँ. Me Too idea should not be कि 50 कंपनी इंडिया में कर रही है तो मैं भी कर लेता हूँ. It should ideally not be that, right? And the third point, what's the size of the and then if it's a Me Too idea, and if you're competing in the same markets with a Me Too idea, then how is it your product or service or your arbitrage better than what's available? You have to be better either product, service or arbitrage. Either of one of these two things में तुमको advantage होना चाहिए कि ठीक है वो भी दे रहा है, मैं भी इस प्रोडक्ट को बना रहा हूँ, लेकिन उसको थोड़ा मुश्किल, ज़्यादा पैसे लगेंगे बनाने में, उसका मार्जिन कम है, मेरा मार्जिन ज़्यादा है because of these factors. So then also it's good for you, because then you can outcompete those people who are selling at lower arbitrage, right? I'll give you a simple, I mean, to simplify this, let's say 2 people are making fire extinguishers. Let's say 100 companies are making fire extinguishers in India today, and you want to compete in the market. So the idea is Me Too, and it's a Me Too idea which is already been exploited in the Indian market. So is your product, the fire extinguisher you make, is it technologically superior to what's available? Are you beat it on that? Idea Me Too hai, opportunity Me Too hai, problem solved. The problem you're solving is not unique. It's an active problem, definitely. But do you want to? I mean, how do you want to compete in this market? Either your product has to be superior. There has to be a delta on the product. कि उनका प्रोडक्ट से ये होता है, मेरे प्रोडक्ट से ये होता है. डेमोन्स्ट्रेबल डेल्टा होना चाहिए. ऐसा डेल्टा नहीं होना चाहिए जिस दिन आप मर रहे होगे तब उस दिन मेरा ये काम करेगा. It has to be demonstrable so that the customer understands it, right? And the second point is, do you have more arbitrage? 1,000 rupees में बिक रहा है फायर एक्सटिंग्विशर, जो तुम्हारे कॉम्पिटिटर्स कंपनीज हैं 700 रुपये में बना रहे हैं उसको. तुम्हारा प्रोडक्ट सेम है, you don't have a product advantage, but can you build it 500? Can you build it 550? So that you got larger arbitrage. Because if you have larger arbitrage, then you have competitive advantage. So competitive advantage अगर है, you'll be able to beat your competition, right? What's the size of the opportunity? That's the third question you ask yourself. If the opportunity is too narrow, too small, then it is not. It might just become an income replacing opportunity. When you're going on an entrepreneurial journey, your target, your objective is not income replacement. It is wealth creation. It is wealth creation for yourself and your next generations. That's why you're playing the game. Otherwise, for a fat bank balance today, you don't need to play the entrepreneurship game. Most likely, a bank balance 15 years after starting the entrepreneurship game will be much lower than the bank balance that your friends will have who did not play that game. So, when you're playing this game, when you're taking that risk, when you're going on that adventure, make it something large. Make sure that that opportunity is large. So if you realize that this opportunity is just इससे क्या होगा मेरे को, ये काम करूंगा, मैं बिरयानी बेचना स्टार्ट करूंगा, क्या होगा, मैं 2 लाख रुपए मैंने कमा लूंगा, तो वो तो मैं ऐसे भी कर सकता हूँ without all this risk. Why should I do it? Right? So these 3 things you have to be very clear about. As I said, this is the most important part of the idea, of the business venture phase. Right? So if all these 3 are positive, the checklist is positive on these 3, then do make sure that you move to the next checklist. What is that? For the 21st century business and going, when you're thinking about building a venture, you have to think about this venture. I want to make it last for the next 100 years or so, not just the next 15 years of my life. So make sure of the following, because as I said, what happens if your venture becomes successful and it becomes this thing, gradually what will happen is you'll start hiring people to do it. And that's where building teams comes into the picture. Right? That happens when all this is in place, and once you can start to find, okay, I can sell this idea and this product to one unknown rational individual, 100 unknown rational individuals, then the teams come into the picture. Right? So when you're doing that, as you keep going in your business, as you keep going up in through your venture, through your entrepreneurial journey, you reach a stage where 98% of your work is done by others. Your personal income or even the income of your company is just maybe 2 to 5% depending on what you do, and gradually that also reduces to 0. Right? So think about any great entrepreneur who's this thing. For example, if you look at Mukesh Ambani is a 2nd generation entrepreneur, not a 1st generation. So he got the benefit of what his father did in his generation, in his life. Right? And I remember my only job was at Reliance in 95 after passing out. I'm Bangalore. And at that time, we got an opportunity to meet and interact with Mr. Mukesh Ambani in his office. And I still remember he made a statement to us that we are entering you guys are entering Reliance at a very exciting stage. We are today 5,000 crores. Us time unka turnover 5,000 crores tha. 5,000 crores tha Reliance Industries ka turnover. And in the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, we are going to add 5 more Reliances to ourselves. That means we are going to be 25,000 crores turnover. Right? And just marker, yesterday, that was turnover, right? So turnover is typically 3 to 5%. At that scale, 5% of that will be profitability. So yesterday, I was just reading the stock market news. RIL announced that their Q2 profit was 13,000 crores. So look at two markers. 5,000 crores turnover. Mukesh Ambani sitting on a 5,000 crore turnover company in 1995. When I joined Reliance Industries. In 2021, Q2, July to September this year, profit is 13,000 crores. So how much of it has been done by his personal physical effort? What will happen to Reliance if he sleeps for 5 years? The company will still continue. And there'll be managers, growth managers. Did Apple shut down when Steve Jobs went? Did it shut down? Or did a new CEO come in and drive it? Right? So that's the ideal listing. And hence, if you're going to build something of that nature, make sure that these 3 things are also part of the checklist of your idea and the problem you're solving. Make sure that your business, the venture you are building, has a technology use component. Definitely, in today's world, if you're not going to use technology for your venture, you are like a dinosaur operating in a forest today. You'll be killed immediately. Make sure it is scalable. Make sure the opportunity is a global opportunity, not just a city-wide opportunity, not just a state-wide opportunity, not just an India-wide opportunity. Make sure that that opportunity is global. Think outside India. Think China. Think Pakistan. Think Bhutan. Think Burma. Think US. Think Europe. Start thinking in that lines. Later on, we'll look at servicing market, because ultimately every product, human beings are the same everywhere. So if I need to eat in India, my somebody who was born the same day and same time and living in the US also needs to eat. So if you are in a food business, you have to think about that scalability geographically, and then look at long-term survival of the market. Does the market survive? Not your own survivability. Is the market going to survive? Because once you gain traction, and once you become, let's say, the 5 people who are going to service that industry, is the market going to survive for long term? Is it going to be a 50 or 100-year market or not? Right? Or otherwise, classic example of non-survival of the market, long-term non-survival of the market. If I don't know, you guys are not there at that time. 1990s was a very exciting time in India. Mobile phones just आ रहे थे. उसके पहले 5 साल का वेट लिस्ट होता था फोन लाइन लगाने का. I remember मैं इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में सेकेंड ईयर में था, तो मेरे I used to live in a private house of my father in Pune. तो and my father was not there, तो हम लोग ने एक टेलीफोन लाइन के लिए अप्लाई किया 1992 में. वो 97 में लेटर आया कि आप ले लीजिए अब टेलीफोन लाइन. So that was the case. So it was an exciting time. And mobile phones entered India in 95. But a year before that, a pager entered. The paging industry entered, where people, the top guys, the top leaders, and the corporate CEOs and the heavy high-ended bureaucrats, everybody used to hang a pager on their belt. So the pager was key. It is a one-way communication. Somebody wants to send you a very critical message, तुमको page मिल जाएगा. You can't send him back. You can't talk to him. तो तुम कहीं गाड़ी रोक के STD booth जो उसमें जाके फोन कर लो. क्या बात है? या अपना opinion दे दो. So for 1 year, the whole game was on paging. And then suddenly mobile phones came. Mobile phones are giving you two-way communication, and also two-way voice communication also, as well as text communication. So the paging industry lasted for 1 more year, because mobile phones cost was too high. 30 rupees per minute was, I think, incoming cost. Outgoing was 60 rupees per minute when mobile phones. So you talk for 4 seconds, you're paying 4 rupees. 1995 rupees, not 2021 rupees. Right? But as mobile phones started becoming cheaper, there was no reason why somebody would have a pager. The paging industry थोड़े दिन और लास्ट किया. क्यों लास्ट किया? Because मेरे पास एक सेल्स टीम है 50 लोग की. तो the boss के बेल्ट से वो पेजिंग निकल गया, पेजर निकल गया. Boss would no longer have the pager. The pager went to those 50 sales people. कि मेरे को तुमको कुछ मैसेज पहुंचाना है. तुम्हारी अभी औकात नहीं कि मैं तुमको मोबाइल फोन दे पाऊँ. Because we can't afford that on you. लेकिन मेरे को तुमको रोज मैसेज पहुंचाना है सुबह कि आज क्या करना है, नहीं करना है. तुम लोग मार्केट में रहोगे तो मैं तुमको पेजर दे देता हूँ, मेरी तरफ से मैसेज चला जाएगा. और वो 2 साल बाद वो भी खत्म हो गया, because the paging industry, it lasted only for 5 years, that opportunity. And people who invested huge into that obviously had to come out with losses. They had to cut their losses at the end, because the industry last nahi kar rahi thi. Right? So now imagine somebody who took that decision in 1991 कि पेजिंग इंडस्ट्री में एंटर करेंगे. Companies that took that decision, they knew the size, they knew the opportunity size, but did they were they not able to see that market में mobiles आ जाएगा? It was well known. US में आ चुका था mobiles. So all those companies who did that made this huge mistake of investing huge amounts into the paging industry, into buying licenses from the government for paging, and obviously it's hundreds of crores at that time, without looking at the checklist. And when you talking about wealth creating this thing, I mean, I hope when you talk about being an entrepreneur, you're not looking at income replacing as an entrepreneurial opportunity. You can do income replacing works for the short term, but your overall vision always has to be wealth creation in an entrepreneurial journey. So that's why this is a classic example, the paging industry. They just missed this point. Anybody, any rational thinking individual in 1992 who's a little bit of a business analyst, you ask him how long this industry will last, can measure this, that it's not going to last more than 5-7 years. So do you want to invest hundreds of crores, which will potentially come back after 20 years in that industry? Obviously no. So these are three things that should be part of your checklist also. Are you using technology? Is your opportunity scalable, both geographically as well as numerically? And what is the long-term survival of the market? Not your survival, the market survival. Is the market going to remain? Right? So then, once these things are in place, then we come to the main issue of team building. Now, team building mein what should be your factors? And the first thing that comes to mind when I talk about or when I think about team building is what one of my entrepreneurship professors told us at IIM Bangalore. And the next slide, please, Sujata. The next one. And he made the statement: who should be your business partners? Who should be your co-founders? And they should not be your best buddies. हम लोग बहुत अच्छे दोस्त हैं कॉलेज से, इसलिए चलो साथ में business start करते हैं. Not the right way to think. Because the business is a separate entity. It's not you. And hence, what you look for in your co-founders, and can you take it back one slide, Sujata? What you look for in this thing, you have to first decide how many co-founders do you need. And this is again हम लोग 5 बहुत अच्छे दोस्त हैं इसलिए start कर देते हैं. ये normally teenage और early 20s वाला जो startups होता है वो इसी logic पे startup हो जाता है. तो पहला बात, तुम कोई भी great venture को देखो, normally it's 1% driven or 3 to 4% driven maximum. Right? So if you want to find co-founders, you're not sure, if you're sure of your opportunity, and if you are ready to do everything, and if you think that you've got the skills to make the opportunity happen, then the number of co-founders should be 0. It should be yourself. Why do you need co-founders? Because the costliest form of capital is equity. Right? We had this Professor George Varugis at IIM Bangalore. One day we came to class, and he was ranting. He was an American returned with very, very strong American accent. And he was ranting to us, guys, I could not sleep last night. हम लोग बोले क्या हो गया भैया, सुबह आए अच्छे मूड में हम लोग आए क्लास करने, क्या हो गया इनको? One of you guys wrote in your projects that debt is costlier than equity, and I thought, what kind of monsters have I created? Right? So equity is the costliest form of capital. It is easy, it's convenient to sell equity at the start, but it's the costliest form of capital. Think about, I don't remember the brand name. There's this cosmetic venture where this woman used to make wonderful, I'm forgetting the name of the brand, huge brand it is today, even today. So, but the story is true. I'm more interested in the story and the idea than who was the person and that. So this woman started making cosmetics at her home, and she opened her first store. And when she opened her first store, that store became very successful. It became very successful. And she was able to sell her products because she had got all the arbitrage in place, the idea, the problem solving, everything was in place. And then she wanted to build a second store. And to build a second store, she said कि 50% stake में तुमको एक investor मिल गया उसको. That investor took 50% stake in the business because he was investing in the second store. The company was one store old. He invested in the second store and he got 50% business. And the business idea was with billions of dollars. So later, when this venture became billions of dollars of worth, in terms of value, that guy got half of that just because he had invested in one shop. He had no idea. He did not have the idea. He was not the person running the business. He was not the person creating the business. He had done nothing for the business. He had just given the money for one shop, and he got half the business value. On the flip side, you have the story of Dhirubhai Ambani buying off one of his partners in 1960s for 5 lakh rupees. That guy was an RIL partner, and he was bought out by Dhirubhai Ambani for around 4-5 lakh rupees, if I remember the number correctly at that time. Right? So imagine a partner at RIL, one of the partners with Dhirubhai Ambani, 2-3 partners, I don't know how many they were but being sold, selling off his venture, his stake for 2, 3, 4, 5 lakh rupees at that time. And what did RIL go on to become? Right? So what value? What did he do with those 5 lakh rupees, and where is that person, or where is that 5 lakh rupees gone now? So you can think about this. So you please remember this, that when you are talking about team building, the first decision you have to take is, do I want co-founders around me, or do I not want to found co-founders? And if I want co-founders, next slide please, Sujata. The co-founder should not be your beer drinking buddy. चलो हम लोग बहुत अच्छे दोस्त हैं इसलिए start करते हैं. That should not be the logic. What should be the logic? Logic should be this. Every business requires certain skills. And initially, you will not be able to hire people. You can't go to an IIM or an IIT and pay 25 lakh rupees. अगर तुम्हारे दिमाग में आइडिया है, तुमको एक IIT के स्टूडेंट को हायर करना है कि मेरे साथ काम करो, और मेरे पास सपोज प्रोडक्ट बिल्डिंग कैपेबिलिटी मेरे पास है, लेकिन मेरे को ऑपरेशंस का पर्सन चाहिए, मेरे को फाइनेंस का पर्सन चाहिए, तो मैं अहमदाबाद चला जाता हूँ और फाइनेंस के आदमी को लेता हूँ. मेरे पास 25 लाख रुपए 30 लाख रुपए तो नहीं है साल में देने के लिए उसको. वो तो मेरे पूरे बिजनेस का कैपिटल है, मैं खुद से बूटस्ट्रैप करके स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ. तो मेरे को इक्विटी देना पड़ेगा ना उसको. तुम चलो आओ मेरे साथ पार्टनर बन जाओ एंड लेट्स स्टार्ट बिल्डिंग दिस. सो you have to critically evaluate this. It is not an emotional. There has to be no emotion in this decision. You have to critically evaluate this. Ki these skills: a product builder, an operations person, a finance person, a marketing person, a tech person. ये 4-5 लोग चाहिए होते हैं. 1% ये 4-5 स्किल चाहिए, जो लोग नहीं स्किल चाहिए होता है. तो एक आदमी में 5 स्किल है. ग्रेट, बी द ओन सोल फाउंडर. तुम्हारे में 2 स्किल है, तुम्हारे जान पहचान का एक लड़की है जिसमें 3 स्किल्स दिख रहे हैं तुमको. You make one, you find that guy, can discuss the idea, find the passion, because an entrepreneurship, a co-founding relationship is even more intricate than a marriage. Marriage mein you can just take a divorce and move on, right? But in a co-founding relationship, the organization gets stuck in between your fights, right? So you can't just walk off. And specifically, if the organization becomes 20 people, 30 people organization, और तुम्हारे co-founder के बीच में tiff हो गया, and you're not able to see eye to eye, that's a huge cost. You can't just walk off there. What do you do to the impact the company is creating? So you have to be very sure of this, even more sure than whom you want to marry when you're talking about a co-founder relationship, right? And complementarity of skills. You have to take that person, and because you respect, you think this way: okay, I'm a good product builder or a service. I'm the guy who's going to define the service, and I'm the guy who's taking care of the operations of this. But I need somebody who takes care of finance and marketing and tech. And this guy A, or these 2 people, A and B, are the 2 people who I feel have got these skills. I respect them for these skills. So I'll take them in. I'll ask them this thing. We'll discuss this. And typically initial discussions, the way hota hai, we'll take all equal shares. Right? 33 कन्विंस कर सकते हो 40-30 के लिए थोड़ा बहुत हो सकता है ऊपर नीचे, बट अदरवाइज इट विल बी मोर एन इवन रिलेशनशिप. अगर थोड़ा सा सीनियर टू जूनियर है तो रिलेशनशिप थोड़ा अनइवन हो सकता है. You can have a 80-20 relationship, 90-10 relationship also. I've spent 20 or 15 years in the industry, and I want you to come in and work as a partner, but I'll only give you 10% stake. That can work. 5% stake, that can work, right? But at your stage, that is not going to work. You're not going to have that. Of course, you can hitch on to somebody who's very senior and then say, give me 5% stake, I'll work for you. That's another way to do it. ठीक है? So ये factors हैं. Last slide, please. पिछले slide, yeah. और apart from this, specific businesses might require more functions to be taken care of. So carefully evaluate the functions your business needs to be handled. Or starting में, of course, since you will not have the money to pay salaries around. I mean, ideally तो क्या है कि तुम्हारे पास पैसे पॉकेट में है, somebody is funding you, तो तुम फाइनेंस पर्सन हायर कर लो, मार्केटिंग पर्सन हायर कर लो, टेक पर्सन हायर कर लो. उसमें क्या होगा, जब हायर करने जाओगे तो ए को हायर किया, ए डज नॉट टर्न आउट टू द राइट पर्सन, 1 साल बाद उसको फायर करके 6 महीने बाद उसको बोल के तुम निकलो, मैं दूसरा आदमी खोज रहा हूँ. You might need to iterate. So that's what happens later on in the organization. Once the roles get defined, you keep finding a role. Okay, who's my digital marketing guy? तो तुमने एक डिजिटल मार्केटिंग का पोस्ट क्रिएट कर लिया अपने कंपनी में. And then you said कि okay, मैं इसको I'll take an interview process. I'll interview 50 candidates. I'll find one guy. तो उसको डाल दिया. उसको फिर 3 महीने 6 महीने evaluate करोगे कि काम कर रहा है कि नहीं. nahi kar raha hai, you're not happy with the way he's working, you replace him. Can't be done with the co-founder. So you have to be much sure about that co-founder at this stage, right? And carefully make sure that your founding team has all the functions. If you have all the functions yourself and you can take care of all the functions yourself, obviously your work will become much larger then please go ahead, be the sole founder. But if you think that there are 3-4 people required, normally 2, 3, 4 is a good team. 4 से ज़्यादा तो crowd हो जाता है starting में. So if you think that it can be done with these 2 people, then go ahead and do it. But take them in because you respect their other skills that you're not bringing to the table. So complementarity of skills is the most important thing at this point. Next slide, Sujata. Right? So remember this, right from day one. You have to think about your function. Suppose you're running the product building function. You think about it as a department. You're the only person running the department, but you have to think about it as a department. Not as कि मैं कुछ काम कर दे रहा हूँ. तो तुम्हारा organization जब function करना start करता है, day 1 से 3 co-founders, you sit on every second day, every third day together, and then you do your work. So you have to operate like a department because you have to do because the organization, the world is not saying कि तुम्हारे अंदर कितने लोग हैं, तुम्हारे पीछे कितने लोग हैं. पूरा 50 लोग का डिपार्टमेंट है कि एक आदमी का डिपार्टमेंट, because the customer is just looking at the product of the service. For him, it's just the product of the service and the quality of that product of the service. So each function that has to come in. I mean, so if you have the capability of doing all 5 departments yourself, then you can be the sole co-founder. Otherwise, you split it between 3 people, 4 people who are say, okay, this guy is running the finance department. He's doing everything that it takes that the finance department. बाद में चल के 50 लोग रहेंगे इसके जगह, इस डिपार्टमेंट में. जब ये कंपनी 2000 करोड़ का टर्नओवर कर रही है तो 50 लोग फाइनेंस डिपार्टमेंट में रहेंगे और वो 50 लोग उस काम को करेंगे. लेकिन आज जब कंपनी में सिर्फ 4 लोग हैं तो मेरा फाइनेंस डिपार्टमेंट ये आदमी चला रहा है. And then he's doing everything that it takes, right from discussing with the CA, right from making sure that all the papers are in place. And today's world, you have to have very strong paper structures. Otherwise, you'll fall into trouble within 5 years with the government and all. So you have to have very, very strong paper structures and backbone of this thing. Marketing, आदमी जो कर रहा है, he has to be a full department. बाद में तुम्हारा marketing will get split into general marketing and digital marketing, right? It might also get split into a branding team separate. It might further get split into social media का separate teams. YouTube का team separate हो जाएगा, Insta का team separate हो जाएगा, वो बाद में होगा. But जब एक आदमी कर रहा है तो he has to operate like all those departments together. So 3000 दिन बाद सब हो जाएगा. You'll have the revenues, you'll have the funds, either from revenues or resources or from funding to run the respective functions. To hire people to run the respective functions. Obviously, workload भी बढ़ जाएगा तब. When you are running a company that has 20 lakh turnover versus running a company where you've got 1000 crore turnover, the amount of work in each department goes up, right? So obviously, then you need more people. But that guy, the founder, will still be performing that function of the head of that function. So remember that. Next slide, please, Sujata. And the next step, the last step after this, of course, the main step, this is not the main step. The main step is then activating or executing the process. But the next step is spend the money. Once all of this in place, then if your business idea is strong, today you'll not have a problem finding money. There's so many people willing to give you money. There are people sitting with money inside, and India today is a rich country, at least at the top. Right, and not just India, even across this thing. I work with Khabri, who are a Y Combinator funded startup, and their co-founders. I was having good friends of mine. I was having a meet with them, and they were talking about how the Y Combinator. They were giving me an anecdotal experience or description of how the Y Combinator funding network works, and they were talking about that you get 3 minutes in front of 1,000 billionaires to present your idea, and they vote on your presentation, and if they like it, you get the funds. So it's as simple. You become a batch of Y Combinator funded this thing. So that's the kind of excitement happening out there. So money is never the concern. Money is always secondary. It will always come to you, right? If your idea is strong and if that this thing is strong, there are people who are looking for you, and it's their job to find you. And if you go and present, And if these things are in place, the arbitrage is in place, why people buy from you is in place, everything is in place, then it's your decision actually. Do you want to bootstrap or do you want to get funded? And there are pros and cons of both. Funding sounds very exciting. You'll have your names in the newspapers the next day, but there are like everything, there's a dark side to it. So what are the pros and cons? When you decide, and of course, the other factor is if you're going to get funded, at what stage do you want to get funded? Do you want to get funded immediately as you start the idea, or do you think that चलो मैं इस idea को चलो आज 20 लाख मैं इस पे revenue create कर रहा हूँ, मैं 10 करोड़ तक मैं खुद ले जाऊँगा इसको bootstrap करके, because then the dilution will be much lesser. If you're wanting if you have a 20 lakh revenue business which gives you 2 lakh profits a year, and you tell somebody कि मेरे business में invest करो, मेरे को 5 करोड़ रुपए चाहिए, तो वो बोलेगा कि मेरे को 70% कंपनी दे दो, तुम 30% रखो. और एक बेसिक लॉजिक है, पैसा अगर तुम्हारे पॉकेट में आ गया, तुम उसको बैंक में भी रखोगे तो 6-7% तो दे देगा ना, इवन विद रिड्यूस्ड एफडीज. तो 5 करोड़ तुम्हारे बैंक में अगर आ गए तो तुमको 35 लाख तो बाय डिफॉल्ट मिलना ही है. तो पैसा बिजनेस में जब भी डालोगे, whenever you insert capital in your business, it'll go faster. It's as simple as that. But under what conditions and for what cost? The George Verghese thought keeps coming back to me every time people approach me and my company for we are bootstrapped. We have not taken the funding route. And much more famous compatriot of mine, Baiju, has gone that route. And you know what that outcome is there. Is he right? Am I right? It's, in my mind, still a question mark. The world will always say that he's right because he's the bigger name and all that now. But in my mind, still a question. I have not accepted the fact that what I'm doing is the wrong this thing. Because at what point do you take it? Right? Do you want to be, you have 10 crore capital and then you're taking in $1 million. At any time you insert money into your business, you've got 10 crore, you have taken the business to 10 crores on your own, and then you insert money into the business. So तुमको क्या, when you're discussing across the table, तुम खुद सोच लो, सर मेरा 20 लाख का टर्नओवर है, आप मेरे को $1 बिलियन दीजिए, ये आइडिया है मेरा. क्या बोलेगा सामने वाला? तुम सोच लो, तुम put yourself in the सामने वाला position, in the person with the money. दूसरा आदमी आता है, सर मेरा 10 करोड़ का टर्नओवर है, ये तो सर नहीं बोलेगा फिर वो, राइट? 10 करोड़ का टर्नओवर है मेरा खुद से, मेरे को ये एक्सपेंशन के लिए पैसा चाहिए, $1 million चाहिए मेरे को. तो negotiation will be much more even, and the negotiation will be, in fact, it will be me asking that person, why should I take your money? तुम्हारा पैसा क्यों लो? Because मेरे पास options है पैसा उठाने के. I got options. I mean, let's say you want to invest $1 million into your venture. एक है तुम stake देके कर दो, costly, very costly, at an early stage. Does add speed. But अगर तुमको लगता है कि तुम्हारा idea strong है और वो $1 million को तुम मैनेज कर सकते हो, और $1 million 7 करोड़ रुपया 7.5 करोड़ रुपया अगर तुम अपने वेंचर में डाल रहे हो, these are things that will come if you start up 1,000 days, 700 days, 1,000 days, 1,500 days into your startup, these questions will come up in front of you. तो 7.5 करोड़ रुपये डाल रहे हो, 7.5 करोड़ का इंटरेस्ट सर्विस कॉस्ट कितना है? 6-7-8% पे पैसा मिलेगा तुमको. If you're inserting 7.5 crores, 50 lakhs per year you have to set aside for paying the interest, for servicing the loan. So do you have this thing in your that guts and the balls to do it? You think I take the risk. The risk is on me. I take the risk. If I'm not able to take 50, इतना तो मैं कर ही लूँगा, 50 लाख तो मैं generate कर ही लूँगा. मतलब 7.5 करोड़ अपने बैंक में रख लो और एफडी में डाल दो और 50 लाख मतलब 2% के लेवल पे तुमको वापस आता जाएगा पैसा. So money is available. You'll find the money, right? But in what form do you want to take it, right? So there are pros and cons of it. So please take the next slide. Yeah. So funded by advantages are speed escalates. You can do much more. I'll give you a straight example. I don't need to look very far. Our tech company is into 5 products. If I take money today, I can get into 20 products immediately. right? With 7-8 crore rupees, I can set up 5 to 7 more products. We can immediately get to 12-15 products. If you're going sequential, then for my company to get to 15 products, it'll take 3-4 years to get there, and things have to work before that. But ये last part, I think वो last save नहीं हुआ. But once you take money, please remember one thing: funded में money comes with a sell by date. So anybody who gives you money has a timeline for his money. He says कि I'm investing this money today in this company, but I want to exit this company after 5 years. तो 5 साल में तुमको वैल्यूएशन, अगर उसका एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि 3 टाइम वैल्यूएशन हो जाए, $1 million तुमको दे रहा है, तो उसको $3 million वापस चाहिए 5 साल बाद, और वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में लिखा हुआ है, या तो तुम खरीदो $3 million से उसको back, you should have the money to buy it back in 5 years time, which will not happen through the business. या फिर then the other part is you should be able to sell that कि उसको भैया मैंने $1 million में, मेरे जब कंपनी 5 करोड़ टर्नओवर पे था, $1 million में मैंने उसको 20% स्टेक दिया था. सो उस पैसे को डाल के मेरा 5 करोड़ रुपए का टर्नओवर 20 करोड़ हो गया. So now I'm buying that. You go to another investor who's sitting with larger bags, larger capital, and you go to him and you tell him that तुम ये 20% उससे खरीद लो, उसको $3 million दे लो, और तुम अब आ जाओ इसमें. तो तब तुम्हारा मनी का लेंथ, बट वो पैसे तुमको नहीं मिल रहे. तो 20% का जो पैसा है ना, तुमने बेच दिया है पहले. इट्स लाइक आई हैड दिस प्रोडक्ट, मैंने तुमको बेच दिया, अब तुम किसी और को बेच रहे हो, मेरे पास थोड़ी आ रहा है पैसा. मनी इज नॉट कमिंग टू मी. So it kind of the same equity is sold again and again and again in a increasing whirlwind kind of thing, and वो तुम्हारा valuation बढ़ता जाएगा. So you have to start playing the valuation game. So when the end point of that capital comes, so if you take $3 million from the next guy and he says that I want in 3 years I want $6 million back from this for 20%, तो 20% के लिए $6 million का हो गया, तो $30 million तुम्हारा valuation हो गया अगर तुम कर लिया इसको. तो वो, and you have to do it, because if you don't do it, the next step is, अगर तुम उसको नहीं दे पाओगे 5 साल बाद, पहले वाले को $3 million तुम नहीं लौटा पाते हो, तुम्हारे पास पैसे नहीं है, और सामने next investor is not ready to buy into your company. If that is not happening, then they will throw you out of the business. You can't fight them. The business is no longer yours. They'll buy your entire equity. They'll say, let us do what you want to do with this business. You're no longer in the business at all. Right? You might have made some money out of it, but you're back to square zero. So that's the dark side of funding. The good side, as you know, is there are lots of good sides. तो ये जो cycle है ना, ये जो funding cycle है, grow करते last investor किसको बेचेगा? वो IPO में बेचेगा. That's where the Zomato and things happen. कि okay, the last investor still made money. So unless your business has that value at the end, somebody somewhere will lose the money. Right? So Zomato का सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम अभी होने वाला है, या जोमेटो इन्वेस्टर्स, रिटेल इन्वेस्टर का प्रॉब्लम ये होने वाला है कि अनलेस जोमेटो क्रिएट्स दैट व्हाटएवर $1 billion का रेवेन्यू का वैल्यूएशन उसका था, उसका बिजनेस उसके वैल्यू के बराबर जब तक नहीं है, तो बिकॉज पहले तो आप कर सकते हो, you can if you are having a turnover of 5 crores and you put 100 crores into advertising, तुम्हारा turnover by default 25 crore तो हो ही जाएगा, but you're doing it at 100 crores loss. But a business will last only will continue in operation only if ultimately it has to make money down somewhere in the line, right? So ultimately some people are playing that game. It's not the right game to play, right? Because the business value, the core value of business starts from arbitrage. So if you are earning 25 crore revenue by spending 100 crores rupees, that is not really a business. That's you're playing the valuation game basically then. But then ultimately कहीं ना कहीं तुमको जाके वो प्लान पॉइंट रखना पड़ेगा कि मेरा अब ये बिजनेस है और ये बिजनेस, because the valuation game will end at that point, at the IPO point. So as a promoter, of course, you will have shares of the company. You can sell your shares and move out. तो तुम अपना fraction of shares बेच दो, you end up with thousands of crores. All that is happening. But do you want to do that? Is the question that you have to ask yourself. What is the opposite side? The opposite side is bootstrapped. Next slide. This was the last one. Okay. So ठीक है, पीछे आ जाओ वापस. I think I send the non-completed this thing. So the opposite side is bootstrapped. I've got this on my computer. So I'll just read from there. तो bootstrap करते हो, अगर bootstrap करते हो तो obviously speed goes down. Speed is slower. और स्पीड स्लोअर है, तुमको सीक्वेंस करना पड़ेगा अपने आइडियाज को, अपने आउटकम्स को, वो सब होगा, राइट? But the advantage, the pain, there's a lot of pain in the short run, because the moment you get funded, you start taking your salaries. You're not bothered about this thing, so you are like in a job. But when you're bootstrapped, अगले महीने तुम्हारी सैलरी आएगी कि नहीं, big question. The first 5-7 years में वो दिक्कत रहेगा. But the positive side of being bootstrapped is you got complete freedom and flexibility, and that's what entrepreneurship is all about. You got complete freedom and flexibility. You decide what you want to do. Valuation game जब खेलते हो तो you are not necessarily playing the best thing for your business. You have to do things for valuation. But when you play the bootstrap to this thing, you actually looking at every decision you take is looked at from a 30-year perspective. When you're looking at funded game, every decision you're taking is looking at a 5-year perspective. कि अगले 5 साल में इससे ये काम करने से valuation कितना बढ़ रहा है मेरा. So will I be able to make the next sale to the next guy? So that's the difference between the two. Which one is right? I'm nobody to answer. Both are right. There are no right or wrong answers. But you have to remember that's your decision. It's always your decision. It's not somebody else's decision. That's the best part of it. And don't get into pressure of the world. Don't get into this thing. If you have the guts and the balls to go entrepreneur, you should have the guts and the strength of conviction to say that. मतलब ultimately देखो www ने क्या किया ना, www ने मार्केट्स को बहुत डेमोक्रेटिक बना दिया. तो एज एन एडटेक कंपनी मेरे सामने एक $1 बिलियन वैल्यूएशन वाली कंपनी भी रहेगी, अगर है सामने, तो मेरे को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. मेरा प्रोडक्ट जब तक स्ट्रॉन्गर है उससे, मेरा प्रोडक्ट जब तक स्ट्रॉन्गर है तो मेरा प्रोडक्ट बिकेगा, आर्बिट्राज में बिकेगा. एज सिंपल एज दैट. मेरा प्रोडक्ट है, मेरा सर्विस अगर उनसे स्ट्रॉन्गर है, मेरे सामने $1 बिलियन इन्वेस्टेड कंपनीज रहे, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. माई प्रोडक्ट हैज टू इज व्हाट आई एम सेलिंग, राइट? मेरा प्रोडक्ट अगर उससे स्ट्रॉन्गर है तो बिकेगा अपने आप, राइट? इट विल सेल बाय इटसेल्फ. सो you have these small quaint restaurants in local corners in Delhi and every Indian city, which are very low investment, but they sell their food against the 5-star hotels, right? Because the product is the food. As far as the quality is strong, and you all of you know that many times you'll not get that taste in a 5-star food that you will get in that local eatery. So it's basically that. So it's a very democratic place here, and that's the biggest advantage of being entrepreneurial now in these ages. So as I said, if somebody asks me, if I get a second innings back to 1995, will you do anything different, knowing all the pain, etc., that you had? I would always choose this. So ये डिसीजन जो है फंडेड वर्सेस बूटस्ट्रैप में तुमको डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा तुम्हारा एंड पॉइंट क्या है. What are you trying to achieve in the next 10 years? You need to be clear about that. And can you do it with when you're doing it with bootstrapped, where is the money coming from? Bootstrapped also needs money. Where is it coming from? It's coming from your revenues and what you can set aside from your revenues. Revenues will come with costs. So what you can set aside from revenues for expansions, that's one. And you have access to debt capital, always. So should you go debt or should you go funded? Debt का amount छोटा रहेगा जो तुमको मिलेगा. But if you are sure of the idea and you think that you can service the debt, it's always cheaper. As one of our profs said, I was meeting him, IMB profs. I met him a few months ago, and we were discussing this issue. So he gave this classic example. What is the difference between taking money from a banker and taking money from a venture capital fund? The difference is, banker से पैसा लिया तो वो तुम्हारे घर पे आएगा, घंटी बजाएगा, पूछेगा खाने में क्या बन रहा है. He'll ask for his कटोरी, मेरे को एक कटोरी में दे दो, चला जाएगा. VC फंड से पैसा लोगे तो वो आएगा तुम्हारे घर पे, घंटी बजाएगा, तुमको हसाइट करके अंदर आ जाएगा, वो किचन में घुस जाएगा, क्या बन रहा है, ये क्यों बन रहा है, वो क्यों नहीं बन रहा है, सब चेंज करवा देगा तुम्हारा. And he will be sitting on your head throughout the day. The banker will be happy. You pay him his interest at the end of the month. He'll be happy. He'll not trouble you for years together. So This is the cost. I mean, this is the pros and cons. Again, as I said, which one is better depends on what your endpoints are, what your endpoint targets are. If you feel that you can do it without funding money, you can do it on your own. And debt से तुम अपने business cycle को जब increase करते हो, तो even a debt bootstrap company can go IPO. Why not? IPO जाने में कितना 2 crores का cost लगता है. It's a 2 crore cost. It's not so intimidating to any MSME today. And even I was talking to my CA the other day. He was telling me that the Indian government is now coming up with a mechanism where MSMEs can go IPO without that the large IPO. They have a secondary process through which at a fraction of the cost you can go IPO. So the moment you are in public money, become a Dhirubhai money, become the darling of the markets. Give them money. People who invest in your company, get 1,000, 2,000 investors out of the market. Give them money. Make money for them. Return their money. They will keep coming back to you. Gain the trust, and you can have as big a business as you want. So all these options are available to you. Funded is the easier part. Aajkal funding available, as I said. There are people sitting with money and with deep pockets ready to give you. But then that's a question you have to take. There are no right or wrong answers. Don't look for what is right or wrong. Isme sab kuch right hai. As far as you reach your endpoints, all the processes are right. So that's what I wanted to present here. I hope you guys enjoyed it and it was invigorating for you and different from what you had expected today. And I really enjoyed talking about this with all of you. Please, questions.
Thank you, sir, for taking us through your journey and the wonderful presentation. Now, I would request Komal to take over the Q&A session.
Thank you, Sneha, and thank you, sir, for going on such a detail on the topic. I'm sure this must have rang some bells for being an entrepreneur amongst the students now. Sir, but since we're already running very short on time, so can we just take up one or two questions as the students are very excited about?
I've mostly answered all the thoughts that people would have had. But if someone still has anything, I would love to answer.
So the students will be raising their hands and I'll be moderating the questions. Too. So Priyam, you may ask your question, please.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for such an insightful session, sir. And sir, I've watched all your YouTube videos while preparing for CAT exam, and I'm really glad today I'm sitting in a B school and I'm we are having a session with you, sir. Sir, so my question is, sir, like your journey has been from a B school, choosing a very different path. So what was one thing which has constantly motivated you?
See, I think the only marker that I look at in my life is my future should be more exciting than my past. So luckily for me, it's still the case. I'm heading to 50 now. Whereas what I pull the legs of all my batchmates कि तुमने जो करना था कर लिया है, मैंने जो करना है वो होने वाला है अभी आगे. So that's always the marker. That's always the motivation. What I'm going to do next 5 years, even I don't know. And that's what excites me a lot about this journey. And that's why I'll always take this over something else. And of course, the other factor that you build an organization. Today, more than 95% of my income does not depend on what I do. I have not reached 100% yet, but 95% of it does not depend on what I do with my time. So if I don't work for a couple of weeks, it does not change the course of my income sources. So that's something which is something that is a marker in your and I'm the first person who will tell you that money is nothing in life. There's a certain point जहाँ तुम्हारे basic needs खत्म हो जाते हैं, उसके बाद पैसा से कुछ नहीं कर सकते. You can't do anything with money. So whether your bank account has 10 crores or 10,000 crores, after that first zero, the next zeros don't make a difference. क्या कर लोगे तुम? Flight में first class जाने के बदले तुम chartered flight से चले जाओगे. पहुंचोगे तो वही ना. So there's a certain point. So money should not be the motivator at all. Till a certain point, it is definitely a motivator. But when you have enough of it, look at it like let's say when you are very thirsty, you're drinking water. The first glass of water is very, very important. The second glass is still important. But if somebody asks you to drink the fifth glass, you'll say, nahi chahiye mereko, it's too much. So the same thing happens with money. Why should money be any different? Right? And I think be product focused, be service focused. How can I solve people's problems? Always think about that. And you will always, even if you go into a job, think about how you'll be solving problems for people. You'll see that you will grow very high to the top in whatever field you join. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Rishabh, you may ask your question, please.
Thank you, Kamal. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah,
thank you for the wonderful session. So basically, my question was that I read in an article that for 23% of the startups failing, not having the right team was the major reason. So what, according to you, one should do to get the team members buy into one's vision and avoid homogeneity in the team, especially at the initial stages of the startup?
I have a very clear this thing. Co-founders को buy कराना पड़ेगा तो co-founders नहीं बनाना चाहिए. They have to believe in the vision as their vision. ठीक है? Buying of the vision होता है जब तुम्हारे co-founders team हो जाते हैं. तुम्हारा finance department एक आदमी देख रहा है. That guy A is looking at finance. You are looking at product and operations. A B C D 4 लोग हो गए. अब A के पीछे जो लोग आ रहे हैं, ठीक है, प्रोडक्ट टीम में जो तुम लोगों को डाल रहे हो, उनको बाय कराना पड़ेगा into that. The first this thing. So I think the failure was basically because of the fact that the mistake that 23%, or I don't know the numbers, I don't know how authentic they are, but वो जो number है ना, वो इसलिए है because वो buy करा रहे थे लोगों को. ठीक है? The co-founders should not be people who come into this because they buy into your vision. They should feel equally strongly as if it's their vision. You might be the person who suggests the idea, but then after that you leave it with that idea. Let them come back to you कि नहीं, I want to join this. You should not need to convince them. ठीक है? और then other factor हो जाता है, skills खराब है उनका. तुमने decide किया ये finance वाला आदमी है और उसका finance skills नहीं है उसको, तो तब फिर वो दिक्कत हो जाएगा.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the answer.
Sir, we have collected a very long list of questions before the session, but since we're already running over time, so we'll have to close the session for discussion here. So yeah, over to you, Sneha.
Thank you, Komal. 95 to 98% of the income. Yes, sir.
Most of those questions were answered, I think, if you can just do the checklist.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah. 95 to 98% of the income is generated by others in the business, not the founders. A business requires a product builder, a operation person, a marketing person, and many more depending on the business. And the co-founder among them are hard to replace. So one need to find co-founders very wisely. Carefully evaluate the function your business needs to handle and not just hang along with your beer buddies. Thank you, Arun sir, for taking us through your journey of being the first generation entrepreneur. And it was indeed very inspiring and challenging. Now we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to sir for taking out his time, for giving us insights and spending his valuable time with us. To the end of the session. Thank you everyone for sharing your wonderful thoughts and insights.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Students, you all may leave now.